hands that you have a big brain. Okay? It just means that in the last 2 million years, our brain increased in size from 1 to 3 pounds. That's significant. It's a big change, right? And we developed something that no other species on this planet has that is quite unique, and it's very helpful when you're doing events. It's the part that's here in the thumbs that you're looking at. If you would put one of your hands on the front of your head like this, let's go ahead and do it. It looks really silly, but it's really nice for the photographer because he's going to get a nice picture of it. Yeah, of everybody holding their most precious asset in the room. This is your prefrontal cortex, and it is your experience simulator. Your experience simulator. Okay, don't forget that. When you walk out of here today, you will have more engine power than most of the flight simulators that are used to land a Boeing A380 at Heathrow. And this is exactly what this piece of paper is intended to do. It gives you the processing power of being able to articulate an event, which is a set of experiences, onto a single piece of paper. Now you could go out there and read all sorts of books, from return on investment, meeting architecture, visual teams, business model generation, game storming, this is service design thinking, into the heart of meetings. There's all sorts of really good material out there. But which of our event owners has the time to go and read these books, let alone ourselves, because we're all busy going on the next yoga retreat, the next fam trip, having lunch at the Dorchester, and everything that goes in between, right? We are very busy people connecting to very busy subject matter experts. That's why we simplified it down to a single piece of paper. And making something simple doesn't mean you dumb it down. What it means is that you need a common way of looking at a problem. Okay? Now, events are very complex machines. We know that. They're probably more complex than a Boeing A380. And I'm just using that. No, it's not a Boeing, it's an Airbus. Right? I'm just mixing it up because Air Force One was going to cost $4 billion, which I just saw on the BBC. But they're complex machines. They're even more complex because we don't control the buttons. We don't know where the wheels are. We can't really figure out where it's going to go next. But we do know that events transform the way that we do business in the world, the way that we talk to each other, the way that we evolve. And so if transformation is something you do consciously, one of the things we did is we stopped complaining about mediocre events and poor events, and we decided to come up with a formula to actually be able to paint and to draw how can you create an event that is worthwhile attending, and that a group of people who are involved in the creation of it together can define how this is going to create value. There's a couple of very simple things that you need to know. All of us in the room in the first 7 years of our lives, we've gone through the same motions of learning how to draw. This is roughly how it went. Whether you were in Japan, in the Philippines, in Hawaii, in New York City, we're just picking on a couple of destinations in Korea or in Germany, it was the same everywhere. Until we started learning a language. When we started writing, all of a sudden it started to go different. We have a hard time understanding each other because we don't have a common scripture. We don't have a common language to speak to each other. So when this event owner, the person actually says, I want to do an event, or I think we should do an event, or I'm in this job and this event comes with the job, yeah? This person actually has a problem. They have a challenge. And sometimes the event planner gets so excited, or the team that wants to supply the solution, like Rob said, is that we start throwing ideas. You could go to here, and you go to this destination, and we should do this, and we should try this, and all of a sudden this person says, whoa, too complex event. Go away. You're disturbing the flow of what I'm doing. And there's a lot of blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of talk that goes at different levels of abstract thinking and doesn't really stick with the people in the right way, which is difficult. So what do you do with that information if you look at that event landscape? Well, one of the things that we did is we said there's a gap, and you need to create some kind of a common language, a language we understand when we talk about events. And that language is a language which, if you look at what's happening in the world out there, is that design thinking is taking on a big role in many organizations. We come from an engineering world in the past century, and we're going into the engineering century, into the design century. Now, designing something on a piece of paper doesn't necessarily become easy. It does become easier when you do it for one stakeholder at a time. Because every stakeholder has a behavior before an event, has the event, and then it has a behavior after the event. And the difference between those two behaviors is what creates value at an event. Now it's scary if you don't know how to design that, because it could mean that what you do with your event doesn't end up where you thought it was going to end up. So it's really important to get these people around the table and come up with a plan to kind of take this complexity and smash it over the head and make it very, very simple. Now we took a year to come up with a single piece of paper, which sounds ridiculous. I hope when you read the book you have some kind of understanding why it took us that long. Because ultimately this person, the event owner, that's the person we need to understand and decode. Because we have locked up in our prefrontal cortex these tremendous ideas of, if you do this, then it could go this way with your behavior change. If you do that, we could end up there. And the collective power of different people in that design process can give you some really, really cool prototypes that could fail, but the collective of the team usually has a very good sense of whether the prototype will work or will not work to create the desired behavior change. All right? I realize this is really complicated stuff after lunch on a Wednesday afternoon in December, but trust me, it's very simple. We are very simple people. All we try to do is help people to break the problem down into small steps that allow you to take the steps forward as you go through this process. So indulge with me in 5 minutes. I'm going to explain this piece of paper for you. There's a copy on each table that you can take a look at if you like. You can download it for free. It's under Creative Commons. It's translated in 9 languages already by volunteers that have picked this up and took the words that we couldn't turn into pictures. And here's roughly how it works. If every event has multiple stakeholders, then the most simple type of event has 2. Would you agree? Okay. Sometimes you have up to 14, or maybe even 28, and it becomes very complicated. But you can boil it back down to 2. So let's say you take this piece of paper, you write down the event name across the top, designed for you in this case, and there's a stakeholder that we're looking at, the stakeholder perspective of the participants, designed by the team that's in the room doing the design with a date and a version number. And first of all, you articulate the entering behavior. How does that person walk in the room as they come to this lunch? You can observe that with a camera. You could record it. You could write that down. Then you want to know, what is the exit behavior? And what are the pains that are associated with the entry behavior, as well as the gains that are part of coming to this event. Now, when you go to an event, there's a commitment you make. You take time out of your schedule to spend the better part of 2-3 hours here at the Dorchester. And you expect some kind of a return for coming here. There's nothing like a free lunch, right? You've learned how to fold a piece of paper and bring it back to your team. Now, besides the return, when you start an event, you always walk in with a set of expectations. As a participant, you come to an event with a set of expectations of what this is going to be like. And this is based on previous editions of the same event, or of what is marketed to you, or what people were saying about this event. Against those expectations, you have a level of satisfaction. Was it above or below my level of expectation? And you can articulate those. And every event comes at a cost and a potential revenue. Now, depending on the type of event and the different perspectives for a participant, there are paid for events and there are events that are not paid for. But once you've defined that outside box, you go to the inside. And in the inside, you've got a number of components. One of them is, what are the jobs to be done by the participant? There's basic needs, like going to the bathroom and having lunch. There are things like social needs, emotional needs, and functional needs. And those functional jobs to get done are all part of what you normally do when you do not go to the event or go to the event. Ultimately, the event delivers a promise. When you open the box or you open the bag, there's a promise inside that event. Now, there's a customer journey or an experience journey that you go through, which are all the hospitality touch points that you orchestrate for the group of people that goes through that event. And on top of that, you are thinking about an instructional design, which are all the different types of learnings that you need to have when you go to an event. These could be skills, knowledge, attitudes, or people learning. Who do you need to get to know? By orchestrating those two components, you can articulate the dramatic arc of your event, or actually map out what your event looks like in practice. That's all very simple, right? You know all of this. All we've done is put it into a piece of paper. And there's a process that goes along that helps you to articulate these behavior changes. Now it's gone really silent. Because I hear you thinking, but how do I write down behavior, right? We're not behavioral scientists. How can we capture behavior? What's the mechanism by which you can do that? And when you have this, and you have this from multiple stakeholders, how do you combine that into one design? Well, this is where additional tools are available that you can also download for free to use for you as a team. Now, this is I can give you an example of how this looks in practice, and you've seen some come by over lunch, right? Let's take an example here of a high-stakes event called the Nuclear Security Summit. 56 heads of state get together, and President Obama asked the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, tapped him on the shoulder while in 2012 in Seoul, and said, how about hosting this event in your country next time? And all of a sudden, he becomes the event owner of quite a complex machine, which cost his taxpayer 24 million, and ultimately needed to be delivered in a very safe environment to reassure atomic materials from not getting lost. To define the behaviors as people come in this case from the participants, you can analyze that as a team by using something called the empathy map. Has anybody used empathy maps before in the room? Okay, great. Very simple, it's on the back of that big sheet of paper, you see an example. Because what you're doing is you're after what people see, think and feel, hear, and ultimately what they say and do. The say and do part is the behavior. And as a group, you can extract that. You can empathize with another person and write down these behaviors. And these become your inputs for the entry and the exit behavior. What was the person like before the event? How do they walk away after the event? Here's another example from the Federation of European Risk Management Associations. And an interesting observation when we documented their event was, these are risk managers, and they say, every line on the map is actually a risk line. We said, what do you mean? I don't necessarily understand. And they were actually right, in hindsight, we didn't know. What are 3 things you can do with the canvas? Well, first of all, you can use it to map out an event. You can use it to decide on a specific prototype whether it's going to work. Ultimately, what our call for action would be is, take your team and try this on your next event, either to document a past one, or try to design a future one using a methodology that allows you to apply design thinking for events. You'll find all the resources you need on this website, eventcanvas.org. You have the book in front of you, which literally are the first copies in the UK. And we're delighted that we've just sold the 1,000th book since its launch last month in North America. And many people are learning about how to design events. So I think it's good news for the industry. There's already 3,000 practitioners out there. Some of them have been trained to become certified event designers. There's about 50 of those on the planet right now. There are programs going on level 1, 2, and 3 to learn more about this. And it's exciting to see that this is being picked up first by people outside of our industry. The ones that own the events have the biggest problems. They feel lonely. We need to help them. This is a way to do it. So with that is about my 15-minute time slot. It's everything that's between the main course and dessert. If you have questions, if you want to linger and see more about what this looks like in practice, I'll put the deck on of other examples. This is all I've been given, 15 minutes. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ruud. I'm sure this has given lots of inspiration to a lot of people. I bet you there's lots